Get this worthless trash out of my sight." Wesley Harrington slammed the architectural model onto the marble floor, where it shattered mere inches from Darian Taylor's boots. The 58-year-old CEO's face twisted with rage as he kicked the broken pieces toward the black maintenance worker. "And clean up this mess before my client arrives." The gleaming lobby of Vertex Architecture fell silent. 20 pairs of eyes turned to watch Darian, 32, on his knees collecting broken pieces of the $30,000 Dubai Tower model, while the all-white executive team stepped around him as if he were just another piece of furniture. Darian's fingers bled from a sharp edge as he gathered the fragments. Not one person offered to help. The blood dripped onto his grey uniform, but he didn't stop, couldn't stop. This job paid his electricity bill, which was already 2 weeks overdue. The main doors burst open. Sheikh Abdullah Alid stormed in with 4 stern-faced engineers. Harrington's demeanor instantly transformed from tyrant to sycophant. "Sheikh Alfred, welcome back to Vertex. We're preparing the presentation now." The Sheikh's cold eyes surveyed the scene, the broken model, the bleeding janitor, the nervous executives. "Is this how you run your business, Harrington? Destroying models when your incompetent team can't solve basic structural problems?" Darian kept his head down, but his senses sharp. He'd overheard enough to know the $80 million Dubai Tower project was on the verge of collapse, literally. The foundation design was catastrophically flawed, and protesters were already organizing demonstrations for next month. A momentary frustration. Harrington laughed nervously. "That model was outdated anyway. My team has been working night and day to your team has failed." The Sheikh cut him off. "Your foundation design will kill people if built as specified. I've seen enough empty promises." Darian spotted the latest blueprints under an assistant's arm. Just one glance at the corner revealed the fatal flaw. His fingers itched to grab a pencil and fix it. So simple, so obvious to him, yet invisible to these overpaid executives with their prestigious degrees. 30 days, the Sheikh announced, checking his diamond-encrusted watch. "Fix it by then, or I pull my funding and find architects who value human lives over their egos." As Darian dumped broken model pieces into the trash, a young executive sprinted across the lobby, coffee in hand. His expensive shoe crushed Darian's fingers against the marble floor. Pain shot up Darian's arm. The executive didn't even pause. "Watch it." Darian snapped before he could stop himself. The executive spun around, coffee sloshing. "Did you just speak to me?" The lobby went silent again. Darian knew the rule. Be invisible. "I said, did you just speak to me, janitor?" The executive's face reened. "While we're trying to save an $80 million project, you're worried about your fingers. Do you have any idea what real pressure is?" Darian rose slowly to his full height, towering over the executive. For one dangerous moment, everything he wanted to say burned in his throat. The executive smirked, sensing advantage. "That's what I thought. Know your place." He deliberately poured his remaining coffee onto the floor. "Now clean that up before you find yourself unemployed. People like you are replaceable." The executive jogged to catch up with Harrington's group, leaving Darian standing in a puddle of coffee mixed with his own blood. From across the lobby, Amara Wilson, the only black architect at Vertex, witnessed everything. Their eyes met briefly, hers apologetic, his burning with something she couldn't quite identify. Darian grabbed his mop, wincing as his injured hand gripped the handle. As he cleaned the deliberate mess, his mind was already solving the Dubai Tower's foundation problem, the same problem that had these real architects panicking. What would they say if they knew the janitor they just humiliated could save their $80 million project with a few strokes of a pencil? The day would come when they'd find out. Darian vowed it would be soon. The key turned reluctantly in the lock of Darian's studio apartment. The electricity was off again. He'd expected it. The final notice had arrived last week, but the choice between power and medicine wasn't really a choice at all. Darian flicked the useless light switch out of habit, then navigated through darkness to the window. Moonlight spilled into the cramped space, illuminating walls covered with architectural sketches and newspaper clippings about famous buildings. Below them, stacked in neat piles, were past due bills marked in angry red. He peeled off his blood-stained uniform, examining his swollen fingers in the dim light. The skin was split, but not broken enough to need stitches. A small mercy considering his health insurance had lapsed 3 months ago. The refrigerator held a half-empty carton of milk and not much else. Darian grabbed it, then pulled a box of cereal from the cupboard, ignoring the expiration date. This would be dinner again. As he ate in the dark, Darian's eyes drifted to the small desk in the corner, the one area of his life that remained sacred. There, his grandfather's brass compass gleamed in the moonlight next to his sketchbooks. 3 pawn shops had offered good money for the antique tool, but some things were worth more than paying the electric bill. After washing his bowl in cold water, Darian lit 3 candles and opened his most treasured possession, his architecture textbooks from Howard University. 5 years ago, he'd been just months from graduation when his mother's cancer diagnosis changed everything. The choice between tuition and her treatment wasn't really a choice at all. The candlelight flickered across pages dense with structural calculations. Darian's fingers traced over the formulas as if reading Braille, his mind running through the mathematics with instinctive ease. Numbers had always made sense to him, pure, logical, beautiful in their clarity. He pulled out his sketchbook and opened to a fresh page. With precise movements, he began recreating the Dubai Tower blueprint from memory, every detail exact, despite having seen it for only seconds. As the image took shape, the flaw in the foundation design became glaringly obvious. The northern support wouldn't handle the lateral stress from coastal winds. Anyone with proper training should have caught it. Darian sketched his solution. Elegant, cost-effective, structurally sound. This was his gift. This was what poverty and prejudice had stolen from him. A knock at the door interrupted his work. His neighbor, Mrs. Chen, from across the hall, stood with a flashlight and extension cord. "You're in the dark again," she said. "Not a question, but a statement. Run this from my apartment until payday." Darian started to refuse, pride fighting necessity. But Mrs. Chen pushed past him. "We all struggle sometimes," she said, plugging in the cord. "When my husband lost his job last year, you shared your food. Now I share my electricity." After she left, Darian plugged in his ancient laptop, a necessity for researching architectural developments through articles stolen from Vert.x's digital trash. Every night he downloaded discarded reports and studies, keeping his knowledge current despite being locked out of the profession. His phone buzzed with a text from the pharmacy. His blood pressure medication was ready, but the price had increased again. $86 to $45 for a 30-day supply. He checked his bank account, $9,417 total. If he paid for the medicine, he wouldn't make rent by the 2E deadline his landlord had given him. The stress made his head throb. He placed 2 fingers against his wrist, counting the rapid beats, too fast, too irregular. He needed that medication. Darian closed his eyes, remembering his last conversation with his academic advisor. "You're the most talented student I've had in 20 years. This industry needs minds like yours." But the industry didn't want minds like his if they came in bodies like his. Another message lit up his phone. An alert from a job search app. Vert.x Architecture was hiring a junior structural engineer. The salary listed would solve all his financial problems. The requirements: a bachelor's degree in architecture or engineering. Darian stared at the posting until his eyes burned. "Who would ever believe someone like me could design buildings?" he whispered into the dark. "When I can barely keep a roof over my head." He closed the app and returned to his sketch of the Dubai Tower solution. This work, brilliant, precise, useless, was the only place where his talent meant something, where he was more than invisible. The moon shifted, casting new shadows across his desk. Darian worked through the night, refining his design by candlelight while his neighbors slept, designing buildings he would never build, drawing futures he would never inhabit. When the first light of dawn crept through his window, Darian closed his sketchbook and prepared for another day of mopping floors and swallowing insults. His spine straightened as he buttoned his clean uniform. Today would be different, he told himself. He'd been telling himself that for 5 years. Monday morning arrived with suffocating tension at Vertex Architecture. Darian pushed his cleaning cart through hallways, buzzing with anxiety. Executives huddled in corners, voices tight with panic about the Dubai project. No one noticed him slip into the main conference room to empty trash bins during their emergency meeting. Layoffs will be inevitable if we lose the Sheikh's contract, Harrington announced to his team, unaware or uncaring of Darian's presence. Our stock price can't survive another high-profile failure. Darian kept his movements slow and methodical as he collected coffee cups and crumpled papers, ears absorbing every word. The room's blueprint-covered walls told the story of their desperation. Dozens of attempted solutions, none addressing the core foundation problem. Xavier Chambers, the 34-year-old rising star architect, stood at the whiteboard diagramming a structural modification. With his tailored suit and Harvard degree prominently displayed in his office, Xavier embodied everything Darian had been denied. We need to reinforce the eastern support columns, Xavier explained, marker squeaking against the board. His solution was halfway competent, but missed the critical wind stress factors. Darian's hand twitched involuntarily. The error was so obvious to him. Javier noticed the movement and turned, eyes narrowing as they landed on Darian. Do you mind? We're trying to save an $80 million project here. Just doing my job, sir, Darian replied, head lowered. Do it somewhere else. Xavier pointed to the door. And that uniform is disgusting. There's blood on it. The cut on Darian's hand from Friday had reopened that morning. A small stain marked his sleeve. My apologies, sir. Darian backed toward the exit, cart rattling. Wait, Amara Wilson called out. At 28, she was the only black architect at Vertex, constantly fighting to be heard. We haven't had the morning trash collected in the West Wing yet. Her kindness was a small rebellion, but Xavier sneered. The janitor can come back later. Some work actually matters around here, Amara. Darian left silently, the weight of Xavier's contempt following him into the hallway. Through the closing door, he heard Amara suggest examining the Northern Foundation support, exactly where the problem lay. Xavier immediately dismissed her. Outside, rain pounded against the windows, matching Darian's darkening mood. His phone vibrated in his pocket. Another text from his landlord. Final warning. Full payment by Friday or eviction proceedings begin. No exceptions. He'd managed to pay for his medication yesterday, leaving barely enough for bus fare to last the week. Rent was impossible now. The phone buzzed again. His electricity provider service disconnection scheduled for Wednesday. Darian leaned against his cart, suddenly dizzy. The fluorescent lights pulsed overhead as his irregular heartbeat echoed in his ears. He needed to sit down, needed water, needed a moment to breathe. Why is this cart blocking the hallway? Xavier's voice cut through his haze. The architect stood with two clients, impatience etched on his face. Move it, Darian straightened, pushing the dizziness down. Right away, sir. As he maneuvered the cart aside, Xavier muttered to his companions just loud enough to be heard. Can't even get decent maintenance staff these days. Probably another diversity hire. The client's uncomfortable laughter pierced Darian's practiced calm. His fingers clenched around the cart handle as they passed, leaving the scent of expensive cologne in their wake. By noon, Darian's trembling hands betrayed his skipped breakfast. In the employee break room, he eyed the communal refrigerator where staff lunches waited. The thought of stealing someone's food crossed his mind for the terrifying first time. Instead, he filled a cup with tap water and chewed 2 aspirin to quiet his throbbing head. Outside the window, construction equipment had appeared at his apartment building. the first sign of the redevelopment project that would eventually demolish his home, regardless of whether he made rent. When he returned to clean the executive bathrooms, Darian overheard a conversation that stopped him cold. "The buyout is nearly complete," Harrington was saying to someone on speakerphone. "Once we acquire the remaining units in that block, we'll begin demolition immediately." "What about the holdouts?" the voice on the phone asked. "They'll cave when we cut utilities. Nobody wants to live without water. I need that land rezoned by next quarter to offset losses if the Dubai project falls through." Darian's blood turned to ice. Harrington's development company was behind his building's redevelopment. The same man threatening his job was also threatening his home. That afternoon, while cleaning the design department, Darian spotted Amara working alone, frustration evident as she erased and redrew foundation plans. "Excuse me, Ms. Wilson," he said quietly. "I noticed the trash needs emptying." She looked up, offering a tired smile. "Thanks, Darian." As he replaced her bin, he hesitated. "That northern support structure." Her eyes widened slightly. "What about it?" He began, but Xavier appeared in the doorway. "Amara Harrington wants the revised plans now." His eyes flicked dismissively to Darian. Maintenance staff shouldn't be disrupting actual work. After Xavier left, Amara mouthed sorry to Darian, who nodded and pushed his card away. Another opportunity lost. By evening, the building had emptied except for the desperate architecture team. Darian mopped the floors of the model room, his reflection distorted in the wet surface. Through the window, he could see Xavier presenting something to Harrington in the conference room. Amara's northern support modification, now claimed as his own innovation. Darian's mop slowed as he watched Amara's face fall when Harrington praised Xavier for finally showing some initiative. The familiar theft of credit made his stomach clench with recognition. In the trash bin beside the model table, something caught his eye. A partially damaged prototype of the Dubai Tower discarded after yesterday's presentation. The structure was intact enough to work with. Darian glanced around and quickly wrapped the model in cleaning cloths and tucked it into his supply cart. For the first time in years, a dangerous hope flickered in his chest. On the bus ride home, rain hammering the roof, Darian clutched the hidden model and made calculations in his head. 2 days until electricity cut off, 4 days until eviction proceedings, 14 days until the sheikh pulled his funding. The construction equipment outside his building had multiplied when he arrived home. A notice on the front door announced water would be shut off for maintenance tomorrow. Harrington's pressure tactic already in motion. In his dark apartment, Darian unwrapped the model and set it on his small table. By candlelight, his fingers traced the flawed foundation design, mind already rebuilding it correctly. He opened his grandfather's compass, the brass cool against his skin. "Time to show them what a janitor can do," he whispered to the empty room as rain pelted against his window and final notices covered his floor. 3 candles burned low as midnight approached. Darian hunched over the salvaged Dubai Tower model, his hands moving with surgical precision. Despite the gnawing emptiness in his stomach, he'd skipped dinner to save money. His focus never wavered. The compass in his right hand traced perfect arcs as he reconstructed the tower's foundation support system, fixing the fatal flaw that had eluded Vert.X's prestigious team. He worked by touch as much as sight, fingers remembering what his mind had studied years ago. The smooth feeling of the modeling clay yielded to his expertise as he reshaped the northern foundation to account for the coastal wind stress patterns. Simple, elegant, correct. A knock at his door startled him. At this hour, it could only be trouble. Mrs. Chen stood in the hallway, her face illuminated by her phone's flashlight. "Water's already off," she said without preamble. "Earlier than they promised, the whole building. They're pushing us out faster than expected," Darian replied, letting her in. Mrs. Chen's eyes widened at the architectural model on his table. "What is this?" Darian hesitated. No one outside his university had seen his work in years. Just a hobby. She moved closer, flashlight revealing the intricate structure. This is not hobby work. This is professional. Her finger hovered over his modified foundation design. You're an architect. Almost was, he answered, the familiar bitterness rising. Had to drop out in my final year. Mrs. Chen studied the model, then Darian's wall of sketches, understanding dawning on her face. You work at an architecture firm as a janitor? The blunt assessment stung despite its accuracy. Bills don't wait for dreams, she pointed to the model. This building? It's the one from the news, the Dubai project with problems. Darian nodded reluctantly. And you fixed it? She didn't wait for confirmation. Why don't you tell them? Show them. His laugh held no humor. You think they'd listen to the man who cleans their toilets? Mrs. Chen's expression hardened. My father was a structural engineer in Shanghai. He built bridges that still stand 50 years later. He would say, talent doesn't care about titles. After she left, her words echoed in Darian's mind as he returned to the model. By 3 a.m., he'd completed the modifications, even improving on his original concept. The result was beautiful, structurally sound, economical, and preserving the tower's aesthetic vision. The sight of his work, tangible and perfect, awakened something long dormant. Pride, possibility, purpose. But as dawn approached, reality crashed back. He was still a janitor with no degree, facing eviction and utility shut-offs. His brilliant solution wouldn't pay his rent. Who would believe someone like me could design buildings when I can barely keep a roof over my head? He whispered to the silent room. Morning arrived with a pounding headache. Without water, Darian couldn't take his blood pressure medication. He tucked the pills into his pocket, hoping to find water at work. The construction crews outside his building had multiplied overnight. A massive excavator stood ready, its yellow arm poised like a predator. The message was clear. Demolition was imminent, regardless of the remaining residents. At Vertex, Darian moved through his cleaning routine mechanically, saving his energy. The medication in his pocket remained untaken. He couldn't risk anyone seeing him swallow pills in the bathroom. Suspicion followed maintenance staff everywhere. During his lunch break, he sat alone in the supply closet, leaning against shelves of cleaning products, while dizziness washed over him. His phone displayed a final eviction warning. 72 hours to vacate, no extensions. The afternoon dragged as Darian cleaned the executive floor. Outside Harrington's office, he overheard the CEO on the phone. The protest is gaining traction. Local news is covering it now. If we don't solve this foundation issue before the Sheikh returns, we're finished. Later, while emptying Amara's trash, Darian noticed her abandoned desk. Her design drawings showed she was still struggling with the northern support problem, getting closer, but missing key elements. An opportunity materialized in his mind. That evening, after everyone had left, Darian returned to his supply closet and removed the modified Dubai Tower model from his cart. He'd smuggled it in that morning, wrapped in cleaning rags. Heart pounding, he carried it to Amara's desk and placed it beside her computer with a handwritten note explaining the structural modifications. No signature, no name, just pure architectural problem solving. It was the most dangerous thing he'd ever done. But what did he have to lose? In 3 days, he'd have no home. Without this job, he'd have no medication. The walls were closing in from all sides. Darian left the building that night with equal measures of terror and exhilaration coursing through his veins. For once, he'd acted instead of endured. Morning arrived with a thunderstorm that matched his nervous energy. Darian entered Vertex earlier than usual, eager to see if Amara had discovered his gift. The executive floor buzzed with unusual activity for this hour. Through the glass conference room walls, he saw Amara gesturing excitedly to several colleagues, pointing to the modified model on the table. Darian kept his head down, mop moving steadily across the lobby floor, but his eyes missed nothing. Amara's expression was animated as she explained the structural solution to her peers. For the first time in years, hope flickered in his chest. The elevator dinged and Xavier Chambers stepped out, making a beeline for the conference room. Darian watched as Xavier entered the meeting, face darkening as he observed the model. Words were exchanged, Amara pointing to specific modifications, Xavier's posture growing defensive. Then Xavier picked up the model, examined it briefly, and said something that made the room fall silent. Xavier left the conference room, model in hand, striding purposefully toward his office. As he passed Darian, his words were just loud enough to hear, "I'll evaluate this mysterious contribution personally. No need to waste everyone's time if it doesn't check out." Darian's mop slowed as he watched his work, his solution, disappear behind Xavier's closing door. The hope that had flickered so briefly began to fade. That afternoon, Darian cleaned Xavier's office while the architect was at lunch. The model sat on his desk, surrounded by notes in Xavier's handwriting, equations confirming the solution's validity. A draft email on his computer screen caught Darian's eye. "After extensive analysis, I've identified the foundation design solution." Xavier was claiming the work as his own. Darian's hand tightened around his broom handle as anger surged through him. But what had he expected? This was how the world worked. People like Xavier took, people like Darian lost. As he turned to leave, his elbow knocked over Xavier's coffee mug, spilling liquid across the desk and onto the keyboard. Panic shot through him as he rushed to clean up the mess, heart pounding with the potential consequences. When Xavier returned and discovered the damage, his rage was explosive. "You incompetent fool," he shouted, drawing attention from the entire floor. "Do you have any idea what you've done? There was critical work on that computer." Darian apologized repeatedly, head bowed, playing the role expected of him while shame and fury battled in his chest. As he left Xavier's office, he passed Amara, who whispered, "I know that model didn't come from him. Who gave it to you?" Before he could respond, Xavier called her away, leaving Darian alone with the knowledge that his solution would save the Dubai project. But Xavier would get the credit, the promotion, the future. That night, Darian returned to a dark apartment building. The electricity was now off in the entire structure, not just his unit. The water remained shut off. Construction equipment surrounded the property like siege weapons. In his apartment, he lit his last candles and opened his sketchbook. If his solution was good enough for Xavier to steal, then it was good enough to document. With methodical precision, Darian began recording every detail of his design process, every calculation, every insight. For the first time in years, he signed his full name at the bottom of each page. Darian Taylor, architectural designer. Let them try to erase him now. Dawn broke over a city indifferent to Darian's small victory. He stood in the Vertex lobby, watching Xavier receive congratulations from Harrington while presenting his solution to the Dubai Tower's structural problems. The bitter taste in Darian's mouth contrasted sharply with the sweetness of knowing his design would work, would save the project, save jobs, including his own minimum wage position. "Brilliant work, Xavier," Harrington boomed, clapping the younger man's shoulder. "I knew promoting you was the right call. The Sheik will be impressed." Xavier's smile held the easy confidence of a man accustomed to praise he hadn't earned. "Just doing what I'm paid for, sir." Darian's mop moved mechanically across the floor, his face a practiced mask, hiding the storm within. He'd spent his life being invisible. Today, that invisibility became his advantage as he observed every detail of the celebration. By mid-AM morning, word had spread throughout Vertex. The Dubai project was back on track. Jobs were safe. The stock price had already risen 3 points on insider whispers. While cleaning the women's restroom, Darian overheard 2 executives discussing Xavier's sudden breakthrough. "Convenient timing," one said, applying lipstick in the mirror. "He's been stuck for weeks, then magically solves it overnight." "Who cares?" the other replied. "As long as the sheikh signs off, we all keep our bonuses." During his lunch break, Darian sat alone in the maintenance room, chewing a dry sandwich and calculating his next move. Xavier had stolen his work, but the foundation design was just the beginning. The secondary issues, structural integrity during seismic events, materials efficiency, cost optimization remained unsolved. Issues that Darian had already addressed in his notebooks. His phone buzzed with an eviction notice. 48 hours remaining. The construction company had accelerated their timeline. Several neighbors had already abandoned the building, unable to live without utilities. Darian closed his eyes, the throbbing behind them intensifying. His medication remained in his pocket, useless without water. The room spun slightly when he stood, a warning sign he couldn't afford to heed. That afternoon, while cleaning near Amara's workspace, she beckoned him over when no one was looking. "That model," she whispered. "It appeared overnight." "Was it you?" Darian hesitated, years of self-preservation wearing with the desperate need for recognition. "I know it wasn't Xavier," she continued. "He couldn't explain the lateral stress calculations when I asked. If I had architectural solutions," Darian said carefully, "would anyone here listen? I would." Her eyes held genuine curiosity, but without proof. The cleaning cart between them represented the gulf separating their worlds. Darian nodded slightly. "I'll keep watching Xavier," she promised. "He's taking credit, but he's missing something. The foundation is just part of the problem." Their conversation ended abruptly when Xavier approached. "Amara Harrington wants us in the conference room. And janitor, there's a spill in my office that needs attention." Alone in Xavier's office, Darian found his stolen model now prominently displayed on the credenza labeled with Xavier's name. Beside it sat expansion plans that incorporated none of Darian's secondary solutions, proof that Xavier had only stolen the foundation fix without understanding the comprehensive approach. That evening, Darian smuggled out copies of the latest project documents in his cleaning cart. If Xavier wanted to play architect with stolen work, Darian would ensure he had the complete design to document and proof of his authorship. At his darkened apartment building, now nearly deserted, he found Mrs. Chen packing the last of her belongings. "They're cutting the gas lines tomorrow," she said, exhaustion etched on her face. "My cousin has a spare room in Queens." "You're leaving?" Despite understanding her decision, panic flared in Darian's chest, his last ally. "I'm too old to fight billionaires," she replied, then hesitated. "What about you?" Darian had no answer. His bank account showed $847. Not enough for a security deposit anywhere, barely enough for bus fare to work. "Before I go," Mrs. Chen said, "my nephew helped me with something." She handed him a small device. "It's a camera for your work to prove what's yours." That night, by the light of his phone's dimming battery, Darian set up the camera in his apartment. With methodical precision, he began documenting his process, speaking clearly as he worked through the remaining Dubai Tower problems: seismic reinforcement, materials optimization, cost efficiency. His grandfather's compass clicked open and closed as he worked, a meditative rhythm connecting him to his heritage. The brass tool caught the phone's light, gleaming like a beacon as Darian explained each calculation, each design choice. "The northern foundation modification addresses the primary structural flaw," he explained to the camera. "But without these secondary reinforcements, the building remains vulnerable to Category 4 seismic events." Hour after hour, he worked and documented, pausing only when dizziness threatened to overwhelm him. The deadline for the Sheikh's return loomed just 3 days away. The eviction deadline less than 2. Morning came too quickly. At Vertex, whispers circulated that the Sheikh had moved up his visit to tomorrow, a full day earlier than planned. The company scrambled to prepare with Xavier at the center of the chaos, basking in his borrowed expertise. During an emergency meeting, Darian was cleaning around. Xavier presented the progress confidently until a senior engineer asked about seismic reinforcement. "I'm still finalizing those calculations," Xavier stammered, shooting a glance at Amara, hoping she might rescue him. She didn't. Harrington's face darkened. The Sheikh specifically mentioned seismic concerns after the Istanbul Tower collapse last month. "We need those calculations before he arrives." Xavier promised delivery by morning, but Darian could see the panic behind his confident smile. That night, Darian worked feverishly in his apartment, now the only occupied unit in the building. Construction equipment had begun preliminary demolition on the east wing. The wrecking ball would reach his section within days.